Now the next case.
All parties in the matter of Jacobson versus Cole. Step forward, please.
Aaron Jacobson is suing his sister, flight attendant Kelly Cole, for an unpaid loan to pay her bills. Kelly says she assumed the money was a gift.
Mr. Jacobson, you claim a loan to the defendant, who's your sister,
yes,
an amount of $3,000. Your sister acknowledges that you gave her $3,000, but your sister says it wasn't a loan, it was a gift. When did you make this loan?
In April.
Tell me about it.
My partner had passed away in March, and I hadn't really seen my sister since 2000. And when he passed away, she showed up at the wake. Then after that, there has been a couple of times that I had talked to her sporadically on the phone, and she had told me that, you know, her roommate had gave her some bad checks and that she was in need of some cash. So I asked her how much would be the minimum that she would need to pay her car payments, the child care for her daughter, and her utility bills. And she said $3,000. So I told her that I could probably swing that.
And when you handed her the money, what kind of conversation did you have?
Well, I told her that I could loan her the money and I needed it to be repaid, but I told her I would loan it to her at a 0% interest, you know, because she was in need.
Why didn't you speak to your sister for the 2-year period between 2000 and 2000?
My sister and my brother were in business together, and he had gotten hurt. So then when he was in the hospital, my sister sort of just swung in, and she wanted to take over the business. And in that time, they were behind on all their bills, so then my mom got involved into it. Then she started running the business with my brother, and then my sister was out of it. So there was a big family dispute over the whole entire mess.
Did you ask your sister back for this money?
Yes.
When?
Every month.
What did she say?
She would show me a stack of bills, and she says, I don't have any to give to you. And in August, she just blew up and was like yelling and using foul language. And then she told me that I should have told you months ago that I was not ever going to pay you.
All right, Ms. Cole, let's hear your version of these events.
Where would you like me to start?
Judge Judy continues in a moment.
Now, I would like you to start on the 29th of April when your brother handed you $3,000.
April.
Yes.
Okay, let's start at April. Okay, he gave me the $3,000. I had driven out there. I had not spoken to either one of them for over a year, not because my brother was hurt. My other brother, who I was in business with, who my mother talked me into going into business with this brother.
How old are you?
Old enough to know better.
So don't blame anybody else for your mistakes. I want to hear about the $3,000.
Okay, the $3,000.
Your brother gave you $3,000 because you said you were behind in your bills. Why didn't you pay him back?
Because I assumed that it was a gift, because I didn't find out until 2 weeks later from my Aunt Carol, who had gone to a picnic with them. She came back to me, she goes, Kelly, do you know that gift that your brother gave you was a loan?
Listen to me, I'm not interested in what somebody said to you outside of this courtroom.
Yes.
I want to know why, in your mind, you think that this brother, who you weren't in business with, would give you $3,000.
Because he and my mother went into the company after my brother was stabbed and took the company, went into bank accounts, took money, back-charged my account, which put me $27,000 in debt, and turned around and deposited into their new DBA account. They took over the business, both of them.
Ms. Cole, I think that you have a persecution complex. So far, you have 2 brothers and a mother. You're not talking to your mother, this brother, or your other brother, because everybody is trying to scam you. Is that right?
Not everybody's trying. They've always done it.
Is there any particular reason for that?
Because I was very close to my grandmother.
Oh, you are a very sick girl. You owe your brother $3,000. Pay it. Judgment for the plaintiff. That's all.
This is case number 314 on the calendar in the matter of Sands versus Azarovich. Parties have been sworn in, Judge. You may be seated. Folks have seats.
Mr. Sands, the defendant is the girlfriend of your former landlord.
Correct.
And it is your claim that during an argument that took place really between your landlord and you, that the defendant assaulted you, caused you substantial injury, caused you to be seen by a doctor, caused you substantial pain and suffering, and you want to be compensated for that.
Correct.
Ms. Esarovich, is your boyfriend here today?
Yes.
Is that this gentleman right here?
Yes.
Okay. You had been a tenant of his for some time. There had been some problems. You wanted the place painted because you said there was paint chipping. He wasn't responsive to your request. You called the housing department. He was forced to paint. You say in retaliation to that, they moved to have you evicted. You ultimately won a settlement from them. So far, is that generally what happened?
Yes.
Now, the garage space had become an issue. Is that right, Mr. Sands?
Yes.
This is when this altercation took place. Now, Mr. Sands, why don't you tell me the date that this incident took place?
It was on September 7th of 2001.
And tell me what happened.
Miss Esarovich and Mr. Evanson approached the gate of the yard leading into my house. I was outside and I asked them if there was something I could do to help them, and they didn't answer, but they proceeded to go into the garage, which was part of the property that I had been renting for in excess of 4 years.
Well, do you have a lease?
I do.
And does the lease include the garage?
It wasn't specified.
If it's not specified, it doesn't include the garage.
However, I had been in full use of the garage for the entire term of my tenancy without sharing it with any other tenants.
Listen, if you have a lease that says that you are renting a house and there is another property on that land, some other edifice, and if it's not specified that you have use of that, that your rent also includes that, you're not entitled to it. In any event, they came on the property that you were renting in order to deal with this garage issue. Let's proceed from there.
Okay, well, they proceeded to walk into the garage. I didn't know what they were doing because they hadn't responded to me when they came into the yard. So I followed them into the garage and I asked them what they were doing. And they told me that they were looking at their garage. And I said that you need to have given me 24 hours of written notice to, examine the property.
It's not your property. Garage is not your property. They didn't go into your house, did they?
Well, they went into something that I viewed as being included in the
That's
in the
your
property.
view. That's your view. That's not their view. That's not my view. They don't have to give you written notice of going and looking at their property. What if there was a
Okay.
guest house on your property? A guest house on the property?
According to the officials that I spoke to
I'm
at
telling
the
you,
rent
I don't
control-
believe that. So
Okay.
let's move on.
Sure.
They went to look at their property.
Okay. And I told them that I would have to call the police, which I then did. I went back into the house, and at that point I asked Emily, who's a friend of mine who had showed up to go to this yoga class with me, to bring me out my regular phone. At that point, I dialed 911 on the regular phone. The police came eventually onto the phone. At that point, the landlord and this woman came out of the garage. She saw Emily standing near the house and started screaming at her.
What was she saying?
She said, "Who is this woman? She is not allowed to be on the property. She is not on your lease. Where are your wife and children? And you are a liar," and et cetera, et cetera. At that point, I walked up and stood between the two of them and said, "She is allowed to be on the property. She's my guest, and you can't come and scream at a guest of mine.
Absolutely right.
You need to leave. This is inappropriate." At that point, I felt my arms pulled behind me like this. And I realized that it was the landlord, Mr. Evanson, who had grabbed me from behind. He then pulled my shirt up around my neck and through my mouth and started strangling me. At that point, I became relatively concerned and I started screaming for help. I continued to scream for help until I couldn't speak anymore. He choked me so forcefully.
Could we move this on a little faster, please?
Sure.
Good.
After that, Mila walked up, and I assumed that she was going to tell him to let me go. But she didn't. She stood at a 45-degree angle to me, and she kicked my right knee in.
That's what we're talking about.
That's what this suit is based on.
Okay. Now, I want you to tell me your version of the events, and please try to do it a little faster.
Okay, this is on the date of September 7, at 6 o'clock approximately. Okay, well, before
Just, you get there.
Okay.
You go into the garage.
right.
Go ahead.
Well, Mr. Sands, he closed the door behind us and turned the lights off and left us in the dark.
Go ahead.
His dog was viciously barking at us.
Where was the dog?
The dog was by his side.
Was the dog on a leash?
No.
Go ahead.
Then he approached me and started threatening me
What did he say?
Well, he approached me as close like that, you know, to my face, and started threatening me and screaming.
Judge Judy continues in a moment.
I never kneed him in the groin.
Just a minute. What do you mean you may have injured him?
I was trying to escape by elbowing him.
You're on the
I
road.
think that's a crock who shot John.
Real cases, real people. Judge Judy. Charles Sands says his former landlord's girlfriend, Mila Azarovich, assaulted him by kicking him in the knee. Mila says Charles kicked her fiancé in the groin.
Go ahead.
Then Lars was concerned about my safety. He circled his arms around Charles Sands.
From the back.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
And he's very experienced in this kind of situation, how to handle it in non-violent manner.
He circled him. He immobilized him.
Right.
Go ahead.
At that moment, Charles Sands kicked him in the groin area very hard. The next moment, Charles Sands took a bat in his hand and hit Lars in his face, then in his ribs, and Lars fell on the concrete floor. Rick Sanchez came out. He tried to pull them.
Who is Mr. Sanchez?
His
Is he a neighbor?
Yes.
Would you step up, sir?
Sure.
You're Mr. Sanchez?
Yes, I am, Your Honor.
How long have you been a tenant?
10 years.
Did you witness any of this altercation?
I did.
Would you tell me what you saw, sir?
On that evening, approximately the same time that both of them mentioned, I had been traveling. I came home, I was laying on my couch, and I heard some screams for help, 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 help.
Male voice, female voice?
It was a male voice. It was a male voice. And knowing that Chuck lives in the back, I didn't know if a vehicle had fallen on him or whatever the case was. And I went to the back bedroom, looked out the window. And when I looked out the window, I saw Mr. Evanson had Mr. Sands around the neck from behind with his shirt around his neck and was holding him, not allowing him to move. I decided to go outside. I went out and I told Mr. Evanson, you don't want to do this, let go of Chuck, let's stop this, at which time he did. Mila was out there also at the time, and of course there was some screaming and yelling and what have you. And he let go of Chuck, and I think I mentioned to Chuck's girlfriend to call the police. I don't know if she already had or not, but I said, call the police. And I went back in the house, and when I went back in the house, I heard some more commotion, so I came back out. Mr. Evanson and Mr. Sands were at separate ends of the yard, and at which time I said, this needs to stop. And I think Mila at that point had forced Lars out the back gate, and they exited the property.
Did you see either of these two gentlemen injured in any way?
No, I did not.
Didn't see him injured?
I didn't see him injured.
And you didn't see him injured?
I did not.
Did you hear either one of them complain about being injured?
No, I did not.
Didn't limp? You didn't see him limp?
I didn't notice.
He didn't say anything to you. I'm injured,
He
call
did
an
not say-
ambulance.
he did not say
Call-
anything to me.
Call an ambulance, I need medical attention?
No.
Nothing?
No.
Oh. What kind of property is this, Mr. Sanchez?
It's a rental property that has a rental above. I live on the bottom floor, and then in the back there is another residence there, which is where Mr. Sands lives.
And what about this garage? Can you tell me about it?
Yeah, it's a removed area. You have the back part of the house, and then probably 5 to 8 feet there's a garage there.
Who uses that garage?
I really never knew. I don't know.
You don't use it?
I do not use it, no.
Do you have a lease?
I do.
Does your lease provide for use of any garage space?
No, it does not.
Did you ever have occasion to call the Board of Health or anyone else with regard to the property and its being in unsafe condition?
I never made a call like that, no.
Thank you. Have a seat. Okay, so you got kicked in the knee, Mr. Sands. Let's hear the rest.
So she kicked me in the knee.
That's what you told me. And this was on the 7th of September?
Yes.
Can I see the medical reports, please? By the way, tell me about the settlement that you won when you sued them. How many times have you sued them?
No, I didn't actually sue them. What happened was I had complained about lead-based paint that was flaking off of the house, and had been doing that for basically the entire term of my tenancy. I have 2 small children, and I was very concerned about this. I told them that I was going to have to complain to the city. They said, do whatever you want, and I did that. The city came out, issued them an order to comply, and within a week they filed to evict me.
Repaid you. Oh, they filed to evict you.
Right. The only grounds that they could use if I hadn't done anything wrong, they said that they were going to move into my house.
Okay.
So within a week of them receiving this order to comply, they had filed to evict me.
Go ahead.
We were involved in this eviction process wherein they tried to say that my children didn't live with me, et cetera, et cetera.
Do they live with you?
Yes, they do. They were attempting to do that so that they wouldn't have to pay me the full relocation fee, which is required by the Rent Control Board. After several court appearances, they settled for a relocation sum that was considerably larger than they would have had to pay in the first place.
Which is what?
$5,000 is the amount that a family is entitled to for relocation.
Is that what you got?
No, actually I got in the neighborhood of $8,000.
That sounds pretty good.
Well, considering
Let me ask
that
you this question. Diagnostic impression here is that you have, other than one knee contusion, and you went to the doctor, I see, a day later, not that day. So you weren't feeling too badly that day. You went a day later. You have mild something right, something strain, right shoulder abrasion, mild soft tissue trauma to the neck. Okay? So you take a little aspirin. Since none of the last three of these injuries is attributed to the defendant, but attributed to the landlord, I'm curious as to why you chose to sue her instead of him.
Well, as I was being assaulted, let me continue.
No. Just answer my question. You answer my question.
Okay, there's two reasons. First of all, I don't believe that Mr. Evanson is fully responsible for his actions. He has had some brain injury in the past, and I think he may be being manipulated by this woman. Secondly, as I was trying to escape, in my struggle, I may have injured him. However, I never kneed him in the groin.
Just a minute. What do you mean you may have injured him? How may you have injured him, sir?
As he was choking me from behind. He's considerably taller than I am.
I see that.
I was trying to escape by elbowing him. So I may have injured him.
So it's a fair statement, so that the reason you didn't sue him and chose to sue her, you felt that he may have a defense of self-defense, and she had none.
No, not precisely.
Yeah. Would you step up, please? Tell me your name.
My name is Emily Gray.
Where do you live, Miss Gray?
I live in Newport Beach.
Okay. Tell me what your relationship is with Mr. Sands.
I'm a good friend of Mr. Sands.
Do you know his wife?
Yes, I do.
What's her name?
Anne.
Where does Anne live?
She lives in San Pedro as well. I don't know the exact location.
But she doesn't live with Mr. Sands?
Not presently.
That is correct. She does not live with Mr. Sands.
She does not live with him now.
And she was not living with him in September of 2001?
She might have just moved out.
Right. Now, how old are Mr. Sands' two children?
His son is about 14 and his daughter is about 7.
And who do those children live with?
They live with him.
They live with him. And they were living with him in September of 2001 after his wife moved out?
Yes.
Does he have permanent custody of those children?
I don't know exactly the details. They spend weekends with their mothers. Otherwise, they're mainly at his house.
Where do they go to school from?
What do you mean from?
Where do they go to school from? From your house?
Yeah.
Both of them?
Right.
Okay. Do you have joint custody of the children?
My son and my daughter are from 2 different marriages.
Do you have joint custody of your children, sir?
I have primary custody of my son, and there is no actual paperwork because we're only separated. My daughter's mom and I are only separated.
They still get along. I mean, you and your ex-wife still get along.
My daughter's mom and I get along pretty well. And
I'm not interested in that, whether you still get along pretty well or not. I'm just interested in why somebody gave you $8,000 to move.
Because it was established that the kids live with me.
They're on the rules.
Now, was he treated for any injuries that he sustained that day?
Yes.
You have the medical report on that?
Yes.
I'd like to see it.
he saw that his tooth was knocked out. So I just...
Right, and his diagnosis is groin contusion, facial contusion, and prescription is ice and Motrin in the evening for pain. So you were right, Mr. Sands. You did injure him. Mm-hmm. Did he sue you?
No.
Why do you think that is, sir?
Because any injuries that he sustained were due to self-defense on my part. He attacked me from behind, and he...
You think you both behaved badly that day?
No, I don't. I don't believe I behaved badly. I tried to escape.
You tried to escape, sir.
Yeah.
You had already gotten outside of the garage. You went inside to get a telephone.
No,
You went inside. Pay careful attention to me, sir.
Okay.
You went inside to get a telephone before anything happened to call 911. And you said you walked outside. Now, if you wanted to defuse a situation before anything happened, you stay inside, you call 911.
Actually, I was concerned that they might do something strange in my garage. We were at that point embroiled in a bitter eviction matter. I didn't know what they were capable of.
Well, Mr. Sands, I know this, sir. I know.
So I was keeping an eye on
They paid you $8,000 in order to get you and your children, who were there sometimes and not there other times, to move. And I know that this gentleman, who you described as someone who may not be functioning optimally because of some injury, was more injured than you were that day. That I know for sure from reading the medical records. And you said that the reason you didn't sue him is because you felt sorry, because you didn't think that perhaps he understood everything that was going on. And I think that that's a crocker who shot John. I think that the reason you didn't sue him is because his injuries were more severe than yours. And if he got kicked in the shins by his girlfriend, so be it. You got $8,000 from them. You're not getting another penny, Mr. Sands. Goodbye.
This is case number 192 on the calendar in the matter of White versus Vargas. Parties have been sworn in, Judge. You may be seated. Ladies, have seats.
Mr. White, according to your complaint, sir, the defendant is a neighbor of yours.
Yes.
And he shot your dog.
Yes, he did.
Shh. The dog survived.
Yes.
And still have the dog, but you had a lot of vet bills.
Right.
And you wanted him also to pay for the psychological damage that was caused to you and your family as a result of this shooting.
Yes.
Where was your dog when he shot the dog?
My dog was in his front yard when he was shot.
And where were you?
I was out of town. I was on vacation.
And who was with the dog at the time that he shot the dog that was in his front yard?
No, when the dog had gotten out of the backyard to the fence.
And what kind of little dog was this?
He's not a little dog. He's a Rottweiler.
A Rottweiler.
Yes.
And the Rottweiler, I mean, I know a little bit about dogs. A Rottweiler weighs several hundred pounds.
Yes.
Right?
Right, 100, yes.
Well, what was your dog doing in his front yard?
I'm not sure what he was doing, but he was just cutting through, I believe, heading back down the street like he does occasionally.
That's outrageous, sir. What is your 100-and-some-odd-pound dog doing out unattended by a member of your family who's able to control the dog? What if somebody's afraid of dogs?
Well, the dog, it's kind of hard and difficult to keep the dog in the yard sometimes, but when the dog does get out.
Never! It's never too hard to keep a big dog in your own property, in the house, in the yard, fenced in, tied up, or at all times under your control. I read this and it sounded to me as if you're the victim. You're not the victim. Your dog is the victim of your negligence. Is this your wife?
No, it's my neighbor.
Who else lives in your home?
No one.
Just you?
Yes.
When you went out that day, where did you leave your dog?
In the house.
Well, then how'd the dog get out of the house?
Well, I had a carpenter there working on the house who had gone out to get some wood. The dog had come outside to go to the bathroom. He'd carried the wood back into the house and then heard the shot.
This is what your carpenter is telling you.
Yes, this is what I was
But your
told.
dog's gotten out before.
Yes, he has.
Right. Well, that's what I gather. And you're here as a neighbor to tell me it's a sweet, loving, friendly dog that you're not afraid of. Is that right?
Correct.
I don't care. Some little 5-year-old might be afraid of a 150-pound Rottweiler that comes walking up to them, even if it's the friendliest dog in town. So, that being the case, let me get to Mr. Vargas over here. Mr. Vargas, I gather that initially you denied that you shot the dog, but then you said to him, yeah, I shot your dog. Your dog was in my front yard, and my child was out there. Was your child outside?
Yes, she was.
How old is your child?
She's 13.
This your child?
Yes.
You have a picture of the dog?
Yes, I do.
Sure, let me see it. Looks like an absolutely lovely, lovely dog. For you to keep in your house, under your control, not to think it's just such a wonderful dog, everybody's going to love it.
Well, I don't feel it that way. I know the dog looks like it could be, very dangerous, but he's not by any means. As a matter of fact, my neighbors all know the dog very well because, like I said, the dog's kind of he's been raised around humans. He's never been with other dogs. He thinks he's human himself. Everybody who comes over, he meets him at the front door to be petted. He's a loving dog. All the neighbors love him, of course. Like I said, he's never had any incident before where he's caused any damage to anyone or even threatened anyone.
Listen, Mr. White, this dog is doing what this dog has been trained to do, which is he's a block dog. He feels as if he has sort of control to go outside if he wants to. People adore him. They may give him a treat. Your neighbor adores him, which is all very nice. But this is a very large animal. This isn't a Chihuahua that can't cause substantial damage. If somebody is walking in a baby carriage and for some reason this dog gets spooked by something, and even if the dog doesn't go over and try to hurt them, they can start running, the baby carriage can tip over, the baby can become injured through no fault of the dog's. Through your fault.
Well,
that's your fault.
But isn't that the reason to have dog pounds and a dog catcher in case your dog does get out, or a dog registry for lost dogs?
What if you think that this dog, because you don't know the dog, all you see is this huge dog on your lawn.
Well, wait a second.
Your daughter is screaming outside. Is that what was happening? Step up. Now you tell me. What happened when you saw the dog?
When I saw the dog, it was barking at me and showing its teeth, like in an angry way.
Were you frightened?
Yes.
Where were you standing?
In my driveway.
And where was the dog?
At the end of the driveway.
And what happened next?
I called my dad's name, and he had gone and get his gun, and he took care of it.
And he shot the dog? Didn't kill it? No.
Right.
That's what pounds are for.
Well, like I said...
Go ahead. I'm listening to you.
Say I was inside the house. I was looking out our bay window and looked across the street. They were outside.
Who's they?
Caesar, the kids, the whole
Kids?
family. Right.
Yes?
Didn't see the dog. All I seen was him standing at his garage. Two sounds that sounded like a shotgun, but it was getting close to 4th of July, so I thought maybe it was firecrackers. Ran back to the back door and opened up the garage door, and that's when I seen the puffs of smoke coming from his garage. But like I said, I did not know at that point in time the dog had been shot.
Just a minute. So you saw his daughter outside?
Yes, but the dog wasn't barking and they weren't screaming.
Listen, how long have you been neighbors?
3 years.
Have you ever seen the dog out before?
Yes.
Did you ever shoot the dog before?
No.
Did you ever say anything to him about the dog before?
No.
But the dog has been out before.
Right.
And it's true, over the last 3 years, you've not had a problem with him. Is that right?
No, I haven't had a problem at all with him, except for the fact that a couple of weeks prior to this, I'd been riding my motocross bike in some trails there in my neighborhood. While bringing the bike back home, I passed his wife on the sidewalk. She was walking down the sidewalk with a stroller, and she hollered something at me like, slow down, and I went on by her and went on home with the bike. And maybe 20, 30 minutes later, the police showed up at my house and said that they had a report saying that I was riding the bike in their yard. I told them at that time that I wasn't riding the bike in anybody's yard. I'd taken it down the trails and back. And so,
were you going too fast, sir?
No.
You don't think so?
I don't believe so, no. It's allowed.
Why do you think, after 3 years of no problem, all of a sudden you would have a problem with them? If I'm a good neighbor and if I'm driving a motorcycle and his wife is walking with a baby in a baby carriage.
Right.
First of all, you don't have a Rottweiler roaming around in a neighborhood where there are babies in baby carriages. Period.
Right.
End of discussion.
My dog doesn't roam the neighborhood.
Yes, your dog gets out and has
right.
gotten
He has
out
broken
before.
out of the fence, like all dogs get out of their fence.
No, sir. You say that that's okay. It's not okay.
Well, I don't agree that it's okay, and I do my best.
It's not okay.
I do my best to keep the dog in the
But
fence.
your best isn't good enough.
Like I said,
Your best, Mr. White, isn't good enough.
Judge Judy continues in a moment.
If you're driving a motorcycle and you pass a woman and she says to you, hey, slow down, and what you said is you just kept on going.
Well, yes.
No, just a minute. That's what you said.
Yes,
oh,
I
yeah,
did.
that's what I did. I just kept on going. That to me is rude. Rude!
And later today,
I agreed to loan him the money to keep him out of jail.
Your Honor, I worked on her computer at least 4 times.
So what? You're hustling me, sir.
real cases, real people. Judge Judy. Philip White says neighbor Caesar Vargas shot his Rottweiler Bones. Caesar says Bones was threatening his daughter.
If you're going out and you have carpenters in your house that you know are going to be taking wood in and taking wood out, and you're not going to be there all day, you take your dog to a kennel. And you say, I want to make sure my dog doesn't get out because it's dangerous for my dog to be out in the street. It could cause a car accident. So I'm going to take my dog to the kennel for the day because I'm not around to supervise this 150-pound dog. That's what you do.
Well, if the man had shot my dog to defend his family, I would have thought that was one thing.
That's what he says he did.
That's what he says he did. And why then he told me that he didn't do it? Why did he deny it?
Because he didn't want to get into an argument with you.
When the police asked him why he shot the dog, he denied it to them also.
Why do you think he shot your dog?
I think he shot my dog because out of benediction, or maybe possibly shooting the wrong dog. Like I said, my dog's real fat popular. My dog lived on the roof of my
Mr.
house.
White, you ain't going to get it, sir. Listen to me.
I
You know why you're not going to get it? You're not going to get it for two reasons. First of all, if you're driving a motorcycle and you pass a woman who's walking with a baby carriage and she says to you, hey, slow down,
Right.
and that's your neighbor, and what you said is you just kept on going.
Well, yes.
No, just a minute. That's what you said.
Yes,
oh,
I
yes,
did.
that's what I did. I just kept on going. That to me is rude. Rude! Because you stop the motorcycle and you say to your neighbor, I'm sorry, I didn't realize I was going too fast. I'm sorry if I frightened you. That's what you say to a neighbor. You don't say, psh.
Well, obviously, my neighbor and I aren't that close, so I mean,
I don't care whether you're close or not.
My neighbor's there until the police
What
came.
difference is it if it's your neighbor or not? If a woman walking with a baby carriage says to you that you're driving too fast, then you stop and you say, I'm sorry.
I
You
did
seem
put
to
the
think
motorcycle-
everything you do is okay.
No.
Pay the vet bill. It's your responsibility. And go and say, I'm sorry to your dog.
Pay the
Goodbye.
Audience are excused. You may step out.
I was just frightened for my child.
I don't believe the time that the dog was threatening anybody.
I grabbed my shotgun.
The dog avoids people. He's never attacked or done anything that played with children.
I wasn't aiming. I just shot toward him.
Christine Bergdahl says ex-roommate Steven Sanchez owes for 2 months' rent and a security deposit.
Mr. Sanchez, did you have trouble finding the courthouse today, sir?
Not at all. Found it just fine.
Did you get here on time?
Yes, I did.
Did you?
15 till.
Huh?
No,
Well, what happened, Miss Bergdahl? Why couldn't you find the courthouse?
because I've been under the weather a little bit, and it took me a while to get here today.
Are you sick?
Yes, ma'am.
What's the matter with you?
Well, I've been working for Red Cross in Louisiana, and since I've been back, I've had a cold, and I haven't recovered from it yet, and I haven't had a home to go to. So I've been moving from place to place with my luggage, and it's took a toll on my health.
Can I say something, Your Honor?
Let me go into what the lawsuit is. I'm going to give you plenty of opportunity to speak, Mr. Sanchez. Ms. Bergdahl, this is what your lawsuit is about. You claim that Mr. Sanchez moved into your apartment with you. You lived together as roommates for about 6 months. He was supposed to pay half the rent. He didn't, but that's not what you're suing him for. You're suing him because you moved out in September. You told him to move out in September. He didn't move out in September. Your name is the only one on the lease. He didn't pay September's rent. He was still there in October. He didn't pay October's rent, as a result of which you lost your deposit on the apartment, which you claim is $1,000. You want Mr. Sanchez to pay the $1,000 that you lost in the deposit that the landlord kept, plus the $1,400 for rent for the month of September when you moved out.
Yes.
And now Mr. Sanchez wants to say something. So within the context of this case, sir, what do you want to tell me?
I was just going to say I've been under the weather, too, as you can hear in my voice.
Felt better
Made
in
it
my
on
day,
time,
too,
so
Bird.
that's all
I
I'm
know
gonna
used
say.
to be better 10 years ago. You wake up, you have aches, you have pains, but when you have to get someplace, you get there, and you get there on time.
Correct.
Anything else you want to tell me right now? No, good. All right, Miss Bergdahl, when did he move into your apartment?
He moved into my apartment at the end of January of 2005.
And how did you know each other?
We had mutual acquaintances before, and we slowly became friends.
And you moved out September what?
September the 9th.
Did you pay September's rent?
Yes, I did.
When did you move out?
Actually,
Is not an answer.
I am still residing there, and I'm in the process of working with the management company right now on that place.
How much rent did you pay in September?
$400.
Is that right?
He paid September. He paid half of. He did not pay $400. He paid $362 for half the rent in September.
What was the whole rent? What's the whole rent?
$725, ma'am.
You're still there?
That is correct.
And you're working with the management company to take over her lease?
That is correct.
Then you have to give her $1,000. If she can prove to me that she gave them $1,000, show it to me.
Of that 1,000, I did participate with 300 of that 1,000.
Steven Sanchez owes everybody money. I'm the last person.
Just a second. Shh. Mr. Sanchez, just show me that you gave her $300.
And that's the problem. My work schedule does not allow me to gather up information, and that's the problem that I have. So
well, you want to know what the problem you have?
it's bad. It's a bad problem. I'm
Glad
sorry.
you said that, sir. What kind of work do you do?
I'm
Almost not an answer.
a manager at a car dealership, and it requires me to be there from open
You're
to
a
close.
manager at a car dealership.
Correct.
What kind of car dealership?
Ford's.
Bird comes in with his lovely wife, Felicia, and wants to buy a Ford. And they come to you. You sit down, you work out a contract.
Correct.
And do you sell anybody a car? Do you order a car unless they do all the paperwork and sign all the paperwork? I know I've bought cars.
At
There's usually a
times.
ton of paperwork,
Correct.
right? So you know that when you're buying a car, you have to be prepared to do a lot of paperwork. When you come to court, you don't come with a smile, Mr. Sanchez. You come with evidence, sir. So I don't know what that piece of paper is that you have with you, but if you claim that you gave her $300, then you bring proof of that.
Correct.
All right. So you have to give her $1,000. That's numero uno, despite the fact that she's late, without a legitimate excuse. Now let's deal with the rent. Did you pay October's rent? She wasn't there. You were there. Did you pay October's rent?
The situation with that was when she went to her retreat.
Just a second.
I'm leading up to the situation
I
at
don't
hand.
listen. Life is short. I'm
Correct.
getting older by the minute. I'll let you expand on the answer if I need it. Did you pay October's rent?
No, I did not, because
Okay,
I wasn't allowed to.
Just a second. Did you live there?
Can I say something,
Just-
please?
Did you live there?
Yes, I did.
Fine. Now, who do you think is responsible for October's rent?
She's on the lease.
Right. And she wasn't living there.
Correct.
You were living there.
Correct.
Just a second. You know, you made me nervous. Something is going in my eye. Bird, look over here. Do you see? Oh, I got it. Thank you very much. Thank you. Does this look all right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're doing good.
Thank you. All right. Listen to me very carefully, sir. The landlord is not related to you in any way. The landlord, I assume, is not related to Miss Bergdahl in any way. Is that right?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So we have to craft this order so that the landlord gets paid their money. What you're going to tell me, Mr. Sanchez, is that you were not permitted to pay the landlord rent because you were not on the lease.
Correct.
Is that what you were going to tell me? You see
read
what
my
a quick
mind.
learn I am, Mr. Sanchez? That doesn't mean that nobody expects Miss Bergdahl to pay the rent, do you? She wasn't there. She wasn't there in October. Did you pay November's rent?
No.
This isn't hurricane relief, sir. You're living in a place you're supposed to pay rent. So
The
you
problem-
make out the check to her and you say, pay the rent. Or you make out the check to the landlord, give it to her. She'll get it to the landlord because she's on the hook for rent. The landlord's not going to let you off the hook. Not going to let her off the hook. Somebody's going to pay October and November's rent.
Okay. I offered to pay time and time again. What the management company said is we need to talk to our lawyers and then we'll get back to you. I went and talked to, I guess her name was Kathy, and she said that you need to vacate the premises. At that time, I was in the middle of a move going to LA to work for another Ford company, and I decided to stay in town because I got another job offer where I reside because it's closer to family. So instead of opening up another lease for a couple of months, I offered to pay 2 months of rent to stay there. What they had told me was, I didn't even know you were there.
So you were a very good tenant. You're very quiet.
I was very quiet.
You have to pay rent. People pay rent, a mortgage, rent, housing allotment. That's what you do. You don't expect her to pay for you, do you?
No, not at all.
Perfect.
I've
All
offered
right.
to pay
How much?
her also, and she denied it.
All right.
Can I say something?
No, do me a favor. I don't listen to tardy people. 700.
He has been asked multiple times by me and the management company to pay something because the person that actually hasn't received any money in 2 months, and he has refused to pay. We've even been over to the house. The landlord even went over to the house requesting money from him, and he didn't hand her
They did not
anything.
come over to look at the house. They came over to assess the situation of what happened and why she left.
And why didn't you pay him then?
Shh. I'm getting to that. The whole
Listen to
situation
me.
of what
Listen
happened.
to me. If it was all very nice, you wouldn't be here. And I wouldn't be able to have such a pleasant afternoon.
The living situation was great. Okay, there was no problem. There was just one little issue of a coworker that she lived with that we became.
Listen, I don't care. I have other things to do. I don't care why she left. she left. And if you would have packed your bag and gone at the same time, then she would be stuck with her lease because it's her lease. You chose to live there, sir, for your own convenience. And you're a big boy. How old are you?
Old enough to know.
Is it a secret?
Yes.
It's a secret? How old you are?
33.
If I were 33, I would shout it from the rooftops.
You look 33, by the way.
That's very nice of you.
You're
It's not going to help you one bit. You owe her $1,000 for the security deposit because you're staying in the apartment. You owe the landlord $1,450. 2 checks. One to her, one to the landlord, $1,450. Mill Creek Management, Inc. is who the check gets made payable to. Thank you very much. That's all.
Strange son-in-law assaulted her. She's asking for lost wages.
Order. All rise. Your Honor, this is case number 234 on the calendar in the matter of Lamance versus Matthews. Parties have been sworn in, Judge. You may be seated. Ma'am, have a seat, please.
Now, Mr. Matthews, I'm going to start with you, sir. Is that okay? This is your mother-in-law.
Yeah, ex. They're in the process of a divorce with my wife.
She is now your mother-in-law.
Yeah.
You seem to acknowledge both instances of physical battery on your mother-in-law, throwing her across the room, I think is what you said here. You admit you threw her across the room. And you also admit that you damaged her car. Right?
Right.
And you say it's her fault. So I'm anxious to hear that. I'm anxious to hear about that.
Your Honor, at that time, me and my wife were having problems, and she was pretty much going under the verge to where she was going to kick me.
Just a second. You and your wife were having problems slowly.
Right. Okay, sorry. And
you were living with your mother-in-law
at the time. And
you have children? One child?
One child. And we were having problems, and we're pretty much to a point where she's going to kick me out.
Who was going to kick you out?
My wife was. But when Roxy ended up finding out about it, she decided to take matters into her own hands and kick me out herself. But in the process, took my son and hid him, because knowing that if she was going to kick me out, I would have took him with me. But she hid him and stated that he wasn't mine and to get out of her house. That is at which time I threw her across the room, yelled at her, where did she take my son? She wouldn't respond, so I went outside and took damage on her car.
Why were you separating from your husband?
Because of his violence and drug use and stuff like that, and just things were not working out. I'd found out he had had an affair.
Violence towards whom?
Towards me.
During the time you were living in your mother's home, did he ever put his hands on you?
We were, well, yes. And we'd only been there for a short time at that point when this all took place.
When you were living at your mother's house, was he using drugs?
Yes, he was.
What kind of drugs?
Crank.
Crack?
Crank.
Crank?
Yes.
What is that?
Amphetamines.
Was he working?
No. He'd lost his job.
Due to the fact that he robbed a liquor store.
Mr. Matthews, were you working at the time you were living in your mother-in-law's house?
No, I wasn't.
Had you been arrested?
Previously, yes.
For robbery?
Yes.
Were you using amphetamines?
At that time, yes. Penny was too.
Penny is your wife?
Mm-hmm.
And how old is your child?
He's 4 now.
Well, it would seem to me that your mother-in-law did absolutely the right thing by taking your child and hiding him so that when she kicked you out of the house, you wouldn't take him with you.
She had no right to be involved. And it was none of her concern.
I was supporting him.
Just a second. Mr. Matthews, let me go over this again with you, sir. You had been arrested for robbery. You were a user of drugs, right? And you were unemployed. And you were living with your mother-in-law because you couldn't afford to have your own house to maintain yourself. So you think that your mother-in-law was doing the wrong thing by trying to protect your 4-year-old son from not only you, but you and maybe even from her own daughter, assuming that what you say is correct, that you were both using drugs. Don't you think that was a smart thing to do? It's what I would do with my grandson. I wouldn't let my son-in-law, if he was arrested for robbery, high on drugs, and unemployed, take my 4-year-old grandchild. No way over my dead body.
Oh, but it didn't matter. Oh.
Over my dead body.
It's not her child. It's not Roxy's child.
So, what you're telling me is you don't want to get down on your knees and thank her for protecting your 4-year-old from his crank, abusing, felon father. You don't want to get down on your knees and thank her.
No.
You assaulted her. Oh, you're going to pay. Now, how much damage did she cause to the car? Let's hear about the car.
I have all the paperwork here.
Just give me a bottom line figure.
I paid $250 was what I paid
Was
out.
your deductible?
That was my deductible. Plus, I paid $229.35 for a car rental at the time when it was in the shop. And I also lost 4 hours off of work because I couldn't work the next day after he threw me across the room.
When he threw you across the room, where were you injured?
Well, he hit me in the right shoulder, and I landed against the couch, and I bruised my left side, down my left side. And I do drive a bus, and I load wheelchairs, and I could not bend down and around to strap down wheelchairs during the day, so my dispatcher sent me home.
Well, I don't know where you came up with this figure of $1,077.42 for, which is the amount you're suing him for. Is that right?
Yeah, that's because...
that doesn't include your pain and suffering.
No, I wasn't, because I wasn't trying to get him for anything. I just wanted my money back, is all I wanted. I mean, you know, he's lived with me. I mean, I've practically supported him during the whole 5 years they've been together. You know, and I wasn't out to get him, actually.
You've always been out to get me, even before anything happened.
Judge Judy continues in a moment.
You pled guilty to a robbery.
Misdemeanor grand theft.
Is that in California? Some state.
And later today,
Regina and I were lovers for 4 years.
I had her arrested for domestic violence.
You made her unhappy, stressed for a couple of days. Someone's got to pay for that.
real cases, real people. Judge Judy. Roxy laments wants compensation for lost wages from her estranged son-in-law, Arthur Matthews, after he assaulted her and dented her car.
Mr. Matthews, when was the last time you held a full-time job?
I've had one now for over a year and a half.
What happened with your court case?
Which one?
The robbery case.
They gave me a 30 days work program.
You pled guilty?
Yeah.
To a robbery?
Misdemeanor grand theft.
Did you go into a store and take money? Is that what it was?
Yeah, the guy that was in the store gave me the money. Another guy was involved.
And they let you plead guilty to a misdemeanor?
Yeah.
Is that in California?
Mm-hmm.
To some state? Had you been arrested again?
Yeah.
For what?
For burglary.
Burglary. How many times have you been arrested all told, sir?
About 4 times in the past 10 years, 12 years.
How much time did you spend in jail?
This last time, 5 months.
You have regular visitation with your son?
No, they refuse to let me see him.
Now, Mr. Matthews, you've been in court enough to know that if you want visitation with your child and if you're willing to be drug tested twice a week to make sure
I
that
get drug tested every week. I go to 3 NA meetings. I go to 3 NA meetings a week, and I've been clean for almost a year.
Oh, that's good. So if you can establish that you've been clean, I am certain that a family court judge here in this jurisdiction would start visitation, even if it was just on a supervised basis. But you have to take the initiative with regard to that. It's not that they're not letting you, sir. With your track record, I wouldn't let you be unsupervised with the child at all. In any event, you had absolutely no basis.